Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're diving into the world of ChatGPT today. You probably heard about it, it's been all over the news, but we're going deeper than the hype. We're breaking it down, how it works, what it can do, what it all means, for you.
It really has captured the public imagination, hasn't it? It seems like AI is on everyone's mind these days.
Yeah, it feels like we're at the edge of something big, like
Yeah.
really big. So to get into it, we've got a lot of research here, mostly from ChatGPT's Wikipedia page, which covers a ton. I mean, everything from the technical details to how it's actually being used out there in the world.
And those applications are really diverse. We're talking about things you might not even expect, fields you wouldn't think AI could touch.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. What exactly I asked ChatGPT? Like, for someone who's hearing about it for the first time.
Well, at its core, it's a chatbot developed by OpenAI, but it's not like your typical chatbot. It's powered by GPT-4, a large language model. Basically, it's a really complex algorithm trained on a massive amount of text data.
So it's like a brain that's read everything, like all the books and articles, even websites.
Exactly. And what sets ChatGPT apart is that it's designed specifically for conversation. It can understand your questions, respond in a way that sounds natural, even adapt to different styles and tones.
Okay, so that explains why it's become so popular. I mean, didn't you get like 1 million users in, what was it, 5 days?
Yeah, 5 days. And in 2 months, it hit 100 million users. Fastest growing consumer app in history. That kind of growth is just unheard of.
It's wild. No wonder companies like Google and Microsoft are, trying to catch up. It's a total AI arms race.
It's definitely an exciting time to be in the AI world. But it's important to remember that all this power comes from the data it's trained on, and a huge chunk of that data, believe it or not, comes from Wikipedia itself.
So it's learning from one of the biggest sources of human knowledge. But I mean, does that also mean it can learn our bad habits? Like from us?
That's a great point, and a lot of research is focused on that, how to stop AI from inheriting biases or creating inappropriate content.
Makes you think. And you know what else is crazy? Scientists estimate that every time you use ChatGPT, like ask it a bunch of questions, it uses about 500 milliliters of water just for server cooling.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing.
It definitely makes you think about the real-world resources that go into this technology. As AI keeps growing, we need to be aware of its environmental impact, for sure.
Absolutely. So we've covered what ChatGPT is and how it's trained, but what can it actually do? I mean, besides chat, obviously.
Right. Well, its capabilities are actually pretty amazing. It can write all sorts of creative content, like poems, even code, scripts, music, you name it. It can answer your questions, even if they're really open-ended or strange.
I've heard people are using it to come up with business ideas, even marketing campaigns.
Yeah, it's true. And it can take tests, sometimes getting scores that are better than the average person. It can even act like a Linux system, responding to commands as if it were a real computer.
Wow, it sounds like it could do almost anything. But is it too good to be true?
Yeah.
Are there any limitations we should know about?
You're right to be cautious. Like any technology, it has its limits. One of the biggest ones, and the one people talk about a lot, is something called hallucinations.
Hallucinations. Okay, now that sounds a little creepy. What does that mean in terms of AI?
Well, think of it like this. ChatGPT is processing information, right? But it's kind of like a blurry JPEG. It has to compress all this data to understand your requests and give you an answer. But sometimes in that process, details get lost or distorted.
So it's like those missing pixels in a photo. It looks okay from far away, but then you zoom in and realize something's off.
Exactly. And these hallucinations can lead ChatGPT to give you answers that sound right, maybe even convincing, but are actually wrong, or they just don't make any sense.
That makes sense. So we have to remember that even though it's powerful, it's not a perfect source of information. We still need to think critically and check its answers.
Definitely. And there are a couple of other things to keep in mind. One is that its knowledge is only up to a certain point in time. So if you ask it about something that happened yesterday, it might not know.
So if it hasn't been trained on something, it's basically clueless.
Pretty much. And then there's the potential for bias. It's trained on data created by humans, and that data can reflect our own biases.
So even though it's a machine, it can still pick up some of our less desirable qualities.
Yeah, unfortunately that's true. But the good news is that researchers are working on ways to fix these limitations, to make ChatGPT more reliable and less biased.
That's good to hear. So we've covered a lot. ChatGPT is a powerful chatbot built on a massive amount of data. It can do some pretty amazing things, but it has its limitations. Now, how do we actually use this technology? Is it free?
Great question. And that brings us to ChatGPT's different service options and subscription tiers.
Sounds like we're about to get into the nitty-gritty. I'm ready.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've talked about what ChatGPT is, how powerful it is, but also some of the things it struggles with. Now let's see how it's actually being used out there in the real world.
That's what I'm really interested in. We've touched on a few examples, but I want to know more. Like specific applications. How is it actually changing things?
Okay, well, let's start with academia. The world of research and writing, it's been completely shaken up by AI writing tools. Researchers are already using ChatGPT to help with all sorts of things, brainstorming, coming up with hypotheses, even writing introductions or abstracts for their papers.
So ChatGPT is like a research assistant for academics.
Yeah, in a way. It can help them sift through all that information, summarize complex topics, even suggest new avenues for research. But this has started a big debate. In the publishing world, I mean. Some journals are trying to figure out how to deal with AI in academic writing. Some say you have to disclose if you used it. Some are even banning AI-generated text altogether.
It's like we have to rethink what it means to be an author, the original author of a piece of work.
Absolutely. And this goes beyond academia. Coding is another field that's been impacted by ChatGPT. You can use it to generate code, debug code, even explain tough programming concepts in a way that's easier to understand.
So it's like having a virtual coding tutor.
Kind of, yeah. But like any tool, it has its downsides. Some studies have shown that ChatGPT can be helpful for coding, but it's not always right. And the code it generates can sometimes be too verbose or even have security flaws.
Right. So it's not a magic solution, but still a pretty valuable tool for programmers.
What about cybersecurity? I've heard people worry about ChatGPT being used to create, like, malicious code.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a valid concern. Researchers have shown how you can use it to make phishing emails, even malware, especially when you combine it with other AI tools that can translate language into code. It means we need even stronger cybersecurity measures to fight back against these new threats.
It's a good reminder that every new technology brings new challenges, and we need to stay ahead of them. So we've got academia, coding, but ChatGPT is also affecting the economy, like people's jobs. Right, that's a big one. The rise of AI has a lot of people worried about job displacement, and ChatGPT is definitely part of that. It's easy to imagine how its abilities could automate certain jobs, like writing, editing, customer service, data entry, things like that.
It's a valid concern, but I wonder if it could also create new jobs, maybe even whole new industries that we haven't even thought of yet.
That's definitely possible. We're already seeing a huge wave of investment in AI, and that
Yeah.
could lead to new companies, new jobs in areas like AI research, development, implementation.
So it's a double-edged sword, I guess, like most technological advancements. It disrupts things, but also creates new opportunities. It's all about adapting, changing with the times.
Exactly. And then there's education. ChatGPT is having a big impact there too. You can imagine how students might use it, for good or bad.
Yeah, definitely. It could be an amazing learning tool, but also a way for students to take shortcuts, and that wouldn't really help them learn.
Yeah, that's the challenge. On the one hand, it can give students personalized explanations, help them with research, even give feedback on their writing. But on the other hand, they could use it to do their homework without really understanding anything. That leads to worries about plagiarism and, a decline in critical thinking.
So it's a challenge for teachers, right? To use AI in a way that helps students learn, to make sure they're still engaged, still thinking for themselves.
Absolutely. And it's not just students. Some teachers are using ChatGPT too to create lesson plans, write quiz questions, even give personalized feedback to their students.
It's like having an AI teaching assistant. That can be really helpful, especially for teachers who are already overworked. But then what does that mean for the role of the teacher in the classroom?
That's a good question. And it's a conversation we need to have. As AI becomes more integrated into education, we need to think about what that means for teachers. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about culture. The impact ChatGPT is having on our culture is really interesting. It's blurring the lines between human creativity and machine-generated content.
Like that church service in Germany that was written entirely by ChatGPT. That was wild.
Exactly. And it's not just religion. People are using it to write books, compose music, create art, even generate scripts for movies and TV shows.
Makes you wonder what it even means to be creative these days. In the age of AI, I mean.
It's a fundamental question, and the line between human and machine creativity will probably just get blurrier as AI keeps evolving.
So we've seen how ChatGPT is affecting things like academia, coding, the economy, even education and culture.
Right.
What about more specific fields, like finance or medicine? Is it making a difference there too?
Oh, definitely. In finance, some people are using it to analyze the market, come up with investment strategies, even give personalized financial advice. But obviously, there are risks. The market is incredibly complex. No AI, no matter how smart, can perfectly predict what will happen.
Right. It's a tool. It can help experts, but it can't replace them. We still need human judgment, especially when the stakes are so high.
Couldn't agree more. And that's especially true for medicine. ChatGPT has shown some real promise in healthcare. Things like diagnosing diseases, giving patients information, even helping with drug discovery. But it's not a doctor.
But it can't replace the human element, the empathy, the years of training that doctors have.
Exactly. AI can be a really powerful tool in healthcare, but we have to use it responsibly, ethically, with human oversight, always thinking about its limitations. Now, let's talk about another interesting area where ChatGPT is making waves, the
Yeah.
legal field.
The legal field. That's interesting. How is AI being used in a world that's all about tradition and precedent?
Well, it's starting to shake things up in some pretty intriguing and maybe even concerning ways. Some lawyers are using it to draft documents, research case law, even predict how a case might turn out. But like any use of AI, there are ethical and practical things to consider.
I imagine accuracy and bias are big concerns,
Yeah,
especially when you're dealing with legal matters that can have a huge impact on people's lives.
exactly. AI tools can be helpful for lawyers, but they have to use them carefully, and always with human review and judgment.
It seems like the same message keeps coming up. AI can be a powerful tool, but we have to use it responsibly, ethically, with humans in the loop.
You've hit the nail on the head. That's the key takeaway from all these real-world applications of ChatGPT.
So we've talked about its impact on academia, coding, the economy, education, culture, even finance, medicine, and law. It's changing so much already. But what about the ethical challenges and the risks?
That's the next big question, and one we'll dig into in the final part of our deep dive. We'll talk about bias, copyright, even the potential for things to go really wrong. It's a conversation you don't want to miss.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We spent the last two parts really getting to know ChatGPT, what it can do, how it's being used out there. But now it's time to flip the script. Talk about the other side of AI, the ethical challenges, the potential risks, the stuff that makes you think twice.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in all the amazing things AI can do, but it's important to look at it critically, to consider, the downsides.
Exactly. And I think one of the biggest concerns, the one we keep coming back to, is bias. We touched on it before, but let's dig a little deeper.
Definitely. Remember, ChatGPT learns from a massive amount of data created by us, by humans, and that data, well, it reflects our biases, our prejudices.
So even though it's a machine, it can still inherit some of our less desirable traits.
Unfortunately, yeah. And that can show up in different ways. Like ChatGPT might give you responses that are sexist, racist, discriminatory, simply because it learned those biases from the data it was trained on.
That's kind of disturbing, to be honest. It's like all our societal biases are being amplified by this technology.
It's a serious concern, and it means we have to be really careful about the data we use to train AI models. We also need to find ways to reduce bias in the outputs, in what the AI actually produces.
So it's not just about the technology itself, but also the people behind it, the choices they make.
Exactly. We have to be aware of the ethical implications of AI development. We need to make sure these systems align with our values, with what we believe in.
And speaking of ethical implications, another big concern is copyright. We talked about some of the lawsuits against OpenAI, but it's worth spending some more time on this.
It's tricky, right? Because ChatGPT's training data includes a ton of text and code from the internet. Some of it is probably protected by copyright, so when it generates something based on that data, it raises questions like, who owns the copyright?
Yeah, exactly. Like if I asked ChatGPT to write me a song in the style of, say, Taylor Swift, who owns that song? Me, because I asked for it. Taylor Swift, because it's based on her style. Or OpenAI, because they created the technology.
Those are the questions courts are trying to figure out right now, and the decisions they make could have a huge impact on AI development, on how we think about creativity, authorship. In this digital age, it's all new territory.
It's fascinating, but also a little scary. We're making up the rules as we go.
You got it. And it's not just copyright. There are bigger concerns, too. Like, what if AI is used for bad things? Generating fake news, creating deep fakes, or even developing autonomous weapons, things that could really hurt people.
Okay, now that's getting into some serious territory. Are we talking about, like, AI becoming a threat to humanity? Like in the movies?
Well, let's not get carried away with the science fiction scenarios, but It is important to think about the consequences. What if we create AI systems that are smarter than us? What happens then?
So it's not about being afraid of the technology, but about using it responsibly, carefully.
Exactly. We need to be aware of the risks and make sure we're developing AI in a way that benefits humanity, not harms it.
Which brings us back to your point about human oversight, about ethics in AI development. We can't just let it run wild.
Absolutely not. We can't assume that AI will just naturally do what's right. We have to be involved, guide its development, and make sure it's used for good.
It's a big responsibility,
Yeah,
but it's one we all share.
that's right. And as we finish up our deep dive into ChatGPT, I think it's good to remember that there's reason for both hope and caution.
I like that. On one hand, we've got this incredible technology. ChatGPT and other AIs have the potential to change so much. Healthcare, education, the way we work, create, everything.
But we also need to be realistic. We need to see the risks and be ethical, responsible. That's how we make sure AI development is a good thing for everyone.
It's a complex world, fast-moving, full of possibilities. And challenges, too.
And ultimately, it's up to us. We get to decide how we shape the future of AI.
Well said. And that wraps up our deep dive into ChatGPT. Thanks for joining us. We hope this has been insightful, something to really think about.
We encourage you to keep learning about this field. It's fascinating and it's changing all the time.